After? Welcome to the Buck Stops Here, the official audio program of NotInHallOfFame.com, and I'm your host, Kirk Buchner, the Buck, the owner and the operator of NotInHallOfFame.com and its sister sites, the Fictitious Athlete Hall of Fame and the Fictitious Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's the Hall of Fame Show, Season 1, Episode 22. Evan Nolan and I, we take a look at the passing of Wes Unseld, a basketball Hall of Famer, and he passed away not that long ago at the age of 74. Great Washington Bullet, probably the best player in franchise history. Unfortunately, with today's current climate, he didn't get the attention that it should have, but we would like to pay a little bit of respect to Mr. Unseld. And we look at the numbers that should be retired in sports. Last week, we looked at the ones that probably shouldn't have been. This week, we take the more positive approach and look at some of the ones who we think really should be retired by their respective franchise. Without further ado, here's Evan. Evan, how you doing?
Everything is perfectly normal, don't you think?
Well, yeah, nothing's happened the last week.
No, nothing happened. Yeah, it's, yeah. I mean, we're not, we don't go into politics, but it's really hard this week not to go into politics.
It's very difficult. I've got a couple shows lined up in the next little while that will sort of touch a bit on that, but yeah, it's. I don't even have the words, Evan. I don't know what's the right thing to say. Other than I'm disgusted.
Yeah, it's. The protests are working in that they arrested the guy who was responsible for kneeling on Mr. Floyd's neck. Mm-hmm. And then they finally arrested the three cops who went after him. The police chief of Louisville got fired because his cops are going around without their body cameras on. They reopened the case to the EMT was at Memphis, who was sitting in her house when cops burst into her apartment to try and find a guy who they'd already arrested. Mm-hmm. And her boyfriend, not knowing who it was, shot, and they shot back and shot her 13 times in a house they should never have been in. So that got reopened today. So things are happening. But pretty much the chaos that is going on is... We've had an issue in this country with race relations for years, and we refuse to have any normal discussions about it. And now we're having a reckoning. Is what's going on.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming.
I mean, the NFL's response to we support the protesters and the right to do whatever. They're the same people who basically threw Kaepernick out of the league for kneeling. And then your QB didn't exactly.
No, he did not.
Didn't exactly have the best couple of days.
No,
but he heard from the important people in his life, his sponsors, and he's very sorry for being inaccurate with his statement. I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was not.
It was certainly very well crafted. I'm sure his people worked really hard on that.
Yeah, and then Jake Fromm today. I don't know if you heard that one.
Yes. Oh my God.
As a Patriots fan, all I could say is that was the guy they wanted the Patriots to draft later in the draft. I'm just glad it didn't happen. Can you imagine if that dude was on the Patriots, what the backlash would have been?
Well, especially I think with the kicker you drafted.
And yeah, we have the kicker with the 3%er tattoo, who allegedly didn't know what it meant.
Well, is that possible though? Like I know a lot.
It is possible. It is possible to know what it meant. I mean, there are enough people who get Asian symbol tattoos who have no idea what any of those mean. Yeah, it's possible, and you can take him at his word maybe for it, but the two of those things combined would have gone very, very badly.
Yeah, and then the only reason I sort of say that, not that I'm trying to condone obviously the tattoo. I know a lot of kids that age. When I see tattoos, what does that mean? Especially like when I was a boss out in Jasper, and I had quite a lot of late teen, early 20-somethings who worked for me, and more than 50% of the time, Evan, I'd ask what that tattoo meant, and I don't know, it looks cool.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it's entirely possible. I will give him that. It doesn't look good.
No, God, no. And then the only reason I sort of say that is just, again, the staggering amount of tattoos that people have no idea what the hell it means.
No, that is true. But I mean, just the idea of Drew Brees, who's, can basically walk on water in New Orleans, having his statement on why Yahoo Finance, why he's being interviewed by them, I have no idea, but that's who it was. Mm-hmm. And then having Kamara and Thomas and the new wide receiver who was with the Emmanuel Sanders, all unfollow him on all the social media things was stunning. I think is what it comes down to. This last week has revealed a lot on all sides about where the American experiment is at this point. And it's not looking so good.
Yeah, so, when Breeze did that, I think that really got to me. I have a Breeze jersey. I don't know if I'm ever going to want to wear that again. I'm massively conflicted with what he said and how someone who has been around black people a long, long time, probably.
Yeah, he's a saint of a 70% African American city.
Well, not. I don't. Well, yeah. I don't know how a lot of them are going to look at him the same way. Now, at the same time, though, I still want to believe that people can redeem themselves, people can change. But for someone to be that tone deaf with the amount of experience that he's had in that community is staggering to me.
Yeah, and I mean, and anyone who somehow makes Aaron Rodgers look like a good guy, which is exactly what happened, because Rodgers gave an interview the same day and talked about all the stuff that he'd learned from his teammates, separate from Breeze, and that he understood why the protests were going on, everything. And Aaron Rodgers came out looking like an adult for the first time since he won the Super Bowl, honestly, because he's acted like a baby for about 10 years.
Yeah.
The fact that he made Aaron Rodgers look mature is kind of incredible. So,
and the funny thing is, he's actually kneeled before. Sorry.
Yeah, he has, but who knows? I mean, yeah, he grew up in Texas, but he didn't necessarily know how to read a locker room. Let's put it that way. He's the most accurate quarterback in football history, except when it comes to giving interviews on race.
I think the best line I saw was I forget who it was who said it, and so I apologize. I want to give the proper credit, but his apology showed that it looks like Breeze can play defense. There's that. Hey, you got to find something.
So, over under on Jameis Winston starts. No, anyway. Yeah, so I think we have made both of our opinions clear on this as to where we stand without actually going too far into it, because that's not what anyone comes here for.
No.
But let's just say neither of us are excited about what's going on, and I'm not sure exactly what the solution is, because the people who are supposed to be de-escalating this are doing the opposite and then lying about it.
Sad but true. So speaking of sad,
I was going to say, can I start with a trivia question for you, though?
Yeah, yes, you can.
I know. I mean, we went through. There are a lot of deaths this week in terms of people who were big in sports, although not necessarily big names. Mm-hmm. But there's one death that was remarkable this week that I want to bring to your attention. Okay. Who had nothing to do with sports or music. You ready?
Sure.
Her name was Irene Triplett. She passed away at the age of 90. Mm-hmm. She passed away at the age of 90 on the 31st of May.
Okay.
Miss Triplett, what is the distinction Miss Triplett has? She's the last person ever in the world to have this distinction that she has. No one else will ever have it.
The last person to have seen Madonna naked?
I don't know. I don't think that's hard, my friend. She is the last person to receive a pension from the American Civil War.
Oh.
Think about that. It is 2020. The American Civil War ended in 1865. That is 150 55 years ago. And she's the last person. She got $73.17 a week for basically her entire life.
Why? Like, what was her relation to the?
So her father fought for both the Union Army and the Confederacy during the Civil War.
Was he Italian?
Had her. I'm sorry.
Was he Italian?
He was not. I mean, his last name being Triplet. I doubt it. But when he was born, her mom was 34, and her father was 83, when she was born. Yeah. So the deal was that you and all of your children got pensions off of the Civil War. That was the deal they had. And she was the last one to pass away during the middle of all this craziness at the age of 90. So the last ever pensioner of the U.S. Civil War, 155 years later, passed away. It's kind of crazy.
And still no reparations.
We'll see. Give it a week.
And we said we'd stay out of politics. Jesus.
Yeah, well, let's go back. So anyway, we have the one big debt to discuss this week.
Didn't get as much attention as I thought it should.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, it didn't get as much attention as I thought it really should, and I'm sure mainly because of what's going around in the world.
Everything going on.
Wes Unseld, legend with I'll say the Bullets, because that's who he played for at the time, passed away. Hall of Famer in college too. And yeah, it's... Well, I think people forget just because you don't think of the Wizards being any good, but Wes Unseld is the only guy to ever sort of lead Washington to a championship.
Yeah, it's in 1978. Towards the end of his career, he led them. He was an undersized center. He was only 6'7", and he's going up against Kareem and I mean all the big centers from the 70s, back when centers were centers. And still he averaged 14 points and 14 rebounds a game for his career.
Just incredible stats.
Imagine guarding guys who are 5 and 6 inches taller than you and averaging 14 rebounds a game. That's crazy. Clearly people always say that he's one of the tough guys. We said that about Jerry Sloan. There's no question Wes Unseld was one of the toughest guys in the NBA ever. It's not, I mean, if you ever look at pictures of him, he looks like he's overweight. If you don't know better, that dude was just built like a truck. He just was huge and I say he's undersized at 6'7", but he was undersized for what he was doing. And the only way he could do that was by being as muscular and bulky as he was. And how of a player, one of the greatest captains, certainly, a basketball team for years. Also, trivia question, he is one of the only 2 people in NBA history ever to win Rookie of the Year and MVP in the same year.
Wasn't the MVP year the year after?
No, it was the same year, 1969.
Oh, okay, I could have sworn he was MVP in 70.
Well, it was the same season. It's him and Wilt are the only 2 players to do it.
Huh. Okay. I must have read that wrong. I could have sworn it was like the year after, but no, so obviously I didn't know that. Clearly from that. I know that was like a massively popular jersey from Mitchell and Ness when they were doing all their when the retro jerseys were happening. Yeah, I mean he's just seriously one of the great underrated players that did get talked about nearly enough. No, Unseld. Yeah, it's weird because it's hard to picture like Washington as a small market, but in some ways it kind of is. It's just not. It acts like it. Yeah, it doesn't have that high profile that you'd think a nation capital would have, which is sort of the same for Ottawa and the Senators, and even in the CFL, it's considered small market. Yeah. Yeah, he just, by the way, he is the leader for the Bullets or Wizards in career games, career rebounds, and career assists as a center.
which is also kind of crazy because they've been around for a while. Les Boulets, right?
I didn't know that Jarvis Crittenden didn't have that award, that honor.
Mitch Richmond when he wasn't pouting. Yeah. So Gilbert Arenas, he passed a lot. So yeah, it's a very melancholy goodbye to Wes Unseld, who deserved more acclaim than he probably got when he passed.
Yeah, and you had a couple other people that you wanted to mention before we get into our retired numbers list.
Yeah, there are a bunch. So, I mean, most of the people who passed away aren't names we necessarily need to run through. I mean, we have probably the greatest motorcycle racers of all time, 9-time world champion in Carlo Ubialdi. I'm sure you remember him well. We have Hall of Fame boxer Curtis Coates passed away. The Bears safety Roosevelt Taylor also passed away. He was a major part of I think it was that 63 Bears who won the NFL championship. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Somewhere around there. But he was first team All-Pro, two-time second team All-Pro, two-time Pro Bowler, a really important part of those late 50s, early 60s Bears teams. Who, I mean, he's on the outside looking in. He'll probably never be a senior candidate, but you make 3 all league teams in your career, first or second. It's at least worthy of being remembered. We had a couple of NCAA football Hall of Famers who passed away, and Johnny Majors, who finished second in the Heisman voting in 1959, and ended up coaching Pittsburgh to their national championship in '76. And then really brought Tennessee back as a coach. And Hall of Fame, college football Hall of Famer Pat Dye also passed away, as well as a few other. I mean, Bob Kulick, the guitarist for Wasp, the Misfits drummer Joey Image passed away, and Chris Truesdale of the boy band Dream Street actually also passed away at the age of only 34. So there were quite a few, plus some Olympic folks in there, guys who won in sailing and fencing, and one other person I probably should definitely bring up, gold medal sprinter Bobby Morrow, who won 3 gold medals at the 1956 games in Melbourne, and was widely considered the greatest American sprinter at that time since Jesse Owens. Also the last great white American sprinter, but in the American Olympic Hall of Fame as a runner, also passed away from pneumonia this week at the age of 88. So there are a lot of people who passed away, none of whom really crossed our radar, but we always want to take time to just mention them.
Oh, for sure. I don't have a good segue to go into retired numbers. So usually I've got something even really bad, so I got nothing.
Well, I don't know. The Bears retired a lot of numbers. It's possible they retired Roosevelt Taylor's number, and I just didn't remember. So there you go.
Yeah, right next to Richie. Did they ever? No, they didn't retire William Perry's.
No, I don't think so. The Bears have retired more numbers than any other team in sports, but I don't know exactly. Bears retired numbers.
Yeah, but it's a good batch. It's a damn good batch of numbers and great players.
They also have the most Hall of Famers in football, so it's really hard to argue. I guess they don't have as many as I thought they did. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. They only have 13, but it's like Bronco Nagurski, George Hallis, Walter Payton, Gail Sayers, Dick Butkus, Red Grange. Like, they don't even have Singletary or any of those guys retired. Payton was the last one. Willie Gallimore, Brian Piccolo, or Brian Sog, I guess, Sid Luckman. So theirs are all legit. Piccolo, I guess, would be the least legit, but there's a whole rally team around behind him thing. Mm-hmm. So,
well, yeah, and like we discussed in our retired numbers list, that's why we didn't touch the ones who were retired because they passed away tragically.
Right. Yes. And now we have the opposite, which are people who should have had their numbers retired by franchise and have not yet. Mm-hmm. And I have like 25 people that I think were worthy of being discussed. I know that seems like a lot. I'm not going to do all 25, but I just want to make sure in case we overlapped that I had enough there. So
I think you're safe, especially when you told me that none of them are in football.
Yeah, I'm of the belief, just the way that football works, that very few football numbers should be retired. That's what Ring of Honors and Halls of Fame are for in football. They're just too many. With the way that numbers are designed in football, where all offensive linemen have to wear these numbers and wide receivers have to wear these numbers and everything, I think it's too hard. Unless it's someone like Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Walter Payton. Like, you're talking one of the all-time greats and not just the team all-time great, if you know what I mean.
Yep, I totally do.
So, I mean, if that's the case, do I think the Patriots should retire Brady's number? Yeah. But the last number the Patriots retired is Bruce Armstrong, who was a hell of a football player and probably a borderline candidate for the Hall of Fame, although Bruce Smith would tell you that Bruce Armstrong belongs in there. But, I mean, nobody thinks – the Patriots should have retired John Hanna, Gino Cappelletti, Michael Hayes, and Brady. And that's essentially it. Everybody else, like Bob D was great, Steve Nelson was great, but they're team guys, not necessarily all-time guys. I think that's what the NFL should be doing versus everything else. So I have no football guys for that reason.
Okay, I've got a few.
All right, so you want to start?
Yeah, because this sort of segues with what we talked about last week, and I'm going to start off with Cincinnati Bengals. And I know I said this before, in last week, but I think it bears repeating again. I think Cincinnati, who has a retired number, just one with Bob Johnson, if we can all agree that their greatest player, and I think there's no one in Cincinnati, and really anyone in football, who doesn't agree on this, that the greatest player they ever had was Anthony Munoz. His number's not retired. Yeah. It's out of circulation, but it's not retired.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, that's a pretty easy one. The Bengals have done a pretty bad job. And I mean, we talk about how the NFL Hall hates the Bengals because there's only Munoz in there. Mm-hmm. And only two other players ever played for the Bengals in the Hall, including Terrell Owens, who you always think of as a Bengal. So they do a pretty bad job of supporting their guys. But, yeah, I mean, if Anthony Munoz meets my requirements, if you had a, all-time first-team offense for everyone in the history of the NFL, Munoz is probably on your offensive line.
Oh, for sure. For sure. So, not only just the greatest player they ever had, he's one of the greatest at his position. So, and that's something they should celebrate. Yes, the Bengals haven't had that much to celebrate, but I mean, if you're going to retire that number, he's still very much alive, still part of the community. That's something that they would all sort of get right behind.
Yeah, so still making Dos Equis commercials. There you go.
The most interesting man in Cincinnati.
No, sorry. I'm wrong. It's not Dos Equis. It's Modelo commercials. I even screwed it up. So, anyway, I'm sorry, advertisers out there. I should be better. I remember my Emery jingles, but I apparently can't remember beer commercials I saw earlier today. Munoz is, if you're going to do one, then Munoz is a super good one because he's, again, so even if you think Munoz is not on that first offensive line, there's no way he's not on the second. Mm-hmm. So we're talking he's one of the 10 greatest offensive linemen in the history of the league. Let's just call the Bengals what they are, one of the most moribund franchises with a couple of highlights in the history of football. And that is a guy who, if you're going to celebrate someone, he should be celebrated.
Yeah, definitely. So who's your first guy?
Can I do two together because they're sort of the same?
Sure.
So I'm going to go with hockey to start.
Okay.
And I'm going to go with two different defensemen who numbers should be retired in multiple places, and they're retired in neither because I think they split their time too much. So the first one of these is the second overall pick of the New York Rangers in 1966, a defenseman named Brad Park.
Oh, yes. Great player.
Brad Park is a fantastic hockey player. He was inducted to the Hockey Hall of Fame on his first year of eligibility. He split his time in his career between the Rangers from when he was drafted up until 1974, 75, somewhere around there, and then he ended up with the Bruins after that. He was traded. He never won a Norris Trophy, mainly because the years he was really good, there was a guy called Bobby Orr, who was also in the league at the time, and made it very hard for him to win. But Brad Park is certainly one of the greatest defensive players or defensemen in the history of the NHL. And I think just because he got split, his numbers are retired either by the Bruins or by the Rangers. He also played a couple years at the end with the Red Wings. We're leaving them out of this, but one or both of those teams should have retired Brad Park's number.
Yeah, no, it's a great one.
And the other one's a more recent version of that, which is Chris Chelios.
Mm-hmm.
So Chris Chelios, who played forever, he didn't seem like he retired that long ago, and he's already 57 because he retired at 48. But he basically had three parts of his career. He was in Montreal for the first 7 years of his career, and he spent another 8 years in Chicago or 9 years in Chicago actually before heading to Detroit to spend another 9 years. I mean, that's a ridiculous amount of time. I understand his number not being retired in Montreal. They've retired so many numbers and everything like that. He didn't, most of the part where you think of him is not as a Canadian. You think of him either as a Blackhawk or a Red Wing. He also played 1 year in Atlanta to finish out his career, and it was like, oh my God, I play hockey in Atlanta. I need to go. But he's won 3 Norris trophies. He's got a ring. He was a starting all-star in. He was in the top vote-getting defenseman or starter in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. He was the second guy in voting 2 more times. He was just a hell of a hockey player, and neither the Blackhawks nor the Red Wings have retired his number, and I don't get it.
Yeah, a phenomenal player. That guy, he probably holds the record, just if you look at his nose, for the most broken noses. He has to.
His face says there are no lies in that sentence.
It's great.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So I've got I was going to say actually for the Rangers, I had another name, Bill Cook, who was part of like just one of the part of that one great line that they had. I know the Rangers for as great as long as they've been around, there's just not that great history there. But the Rangers fans are phenomenal. But that wasn't really one of my 10. He was sort of like my backup 10. But since you brought up the Rangers, that was just a name I wanted to throw out.
Cool. No, Bill Cook's someone else definitely to think about. So who else do you have?
Well, I have one that I'm a little shaky on, but it kind of ties in with Wes Unseld, one of his teammates. He was only there for 4 years, and we talked about Unseld, who was the leader of that team, but he wasn't the best player at that point. That was Bob Dandridge.
I have Dandridge as one of my guys. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because Dandridge, he didn't win the playoff MVP or the finals MVP, but he should have. Unseld was the sentimental pick, but statistically, it wasn't even close. Dandridge was by far and away the best player of that, and they don't win that without Dandridge. They don't even come close without him. I mean, you could make a case for him to have his number retired in Milwaukee also, but I went with the Bullets because if that's your best player on your only championship and you've got some other names retired that aren't quite at that level, I think he would be an excellent choice.
Fair enough. That is a very good choice. No, it's hard to argue. I mean, I had him on here as well. The Bullets have by and large done a pretty good job with the retiring numbers, but he does seem like an oversight.
Mm-hmm. All right, so
sorry, the Wizards. We were talking about the Bullets earlier, and I still have them in my head. So
I did love that name, though. The Bullets just sound and I know why they did it, but I still love that name.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right, should I go again?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to go with I brought him up when we talked about this overall, but probably recently the best player who's had a chance for the retires number and hasn't. I think it's mainly because of the franchise move, but that's Gary Payton.
Yes.
Gary Payton is basically the leader in tons of categories for the Zombie Sonics who play in Oklahoma now, in Oklahoma City. But the Thunder have been there long enough that they have their own history. Unfortunately, that means that Payton, who retired basically around the time of the move, has been forgotten and has not had his number retired. If Seattle ever comes back as a franchise, they should get all those names and players back and get Payton's number up in the rafters as soon as possible. But Payton was one of the most dominant players in the league for most of his career. And definitely somebody who is worthy of, he's a Hall of Fame already, definitely somebody who's worthy of memorialization. He had 13 years in Seattle, 2 in Miami, 1 with the Lakers, 1 with the Celtics, and 1 with the Bucks. But he deserves it, and they just haven't done it. I think that's more than anything that the franchise moved. So.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. And because they still own the city, like part of the agreement, Seattle owns the colors and the name. So I would imagine that if Seattle does get their team back, and I certainly hope they do, that they do that for Payton. I'm sure they would.
Yeah, I imagine that's one of the first things they do. Like, can you imagine getting the team back and immediately, like, retiring Payton's number? Like, that would just blow the absolute roof off the place. Mm-hmm. So yeah, if they ever get a team back, which I hope they do someday. If hockey's getting up to 32 teams, there's no reason that the NBA can't get to 32 teams. I'm suspecting if there's ever basketball back in Seattle, that will happen.
Yeah, there was a tweet where I forget who it was. It might have been a rapper who just said, I don't even know if he was a rapper, but he's saying how it's a real shame how Seattle doesn't have an NBA team, to which or a basketball team, to which a couple of members of the Seattle women's team responded, "Yes, we do." The response that she got and was not very positive.
I can understand. All right, so what do you got next?
I don't have a segue from a WNBA to this. I should. I wish I did. I'm not as good as this as I thought.
I have a Seattle one, if that will help.
Well, it might be the same Mariner that I've got.
I bet it is. Who is it?
A combination of Randy Johnson, Ichiro Suzuki.
Oh, well, all right, excellent. Well, Ichiro is just retired, so that one's definite. But yeah, Randy Johnson's what I was going to talk about.
Yeah, so because they're both, but they both wore the same number.
Oh, I didn't realize that. How did I not realize that?
I just learned that today. Apparently, they both wore 51. Now, because Seattle,
why did I never realize that? That's weird.
Well, in Seattle too, because they won't retire. Apparently their policy is they wait until someone gets into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Johnson's in, but I guess they don't necessarily view him as such. Not really sure why. We know that Ichiro is going in, and is there really any reason to sort of delay this? There's not.
No. I mean, you want to do Randy Johnson first, and then Ichiro again. That's fine, but yeah, no, that's strange because his number's retired by the Diamondbacks, and rightly so. Mm-hmm. But it's weird that it's not retired in Seattle.
Well, yeah, because he meets that criteria, and it's Johnson did what Johnson had to do. What any baseball player is going to do, or what any athlete is probably going to do. You're going to try and get the most money for the short time that you can. I will never begrudge any athlete for doing that. Never.
No, and the man won a Cy Young in Seattle. Mm-hmm. I think we're one of only 2 pitchers to do that. Felix did that too, right?
King Felix. He has a Cy Young.
Yeah, King Felix. So those are only 2 guys to win Cy Youngs in Seattle. He's got 5 total, 4 of which were in Arizona. But he's clearly one of the greatest pitchers of all time. And with all due respect to Felix Hernandez, probably the best pitcher in Mariners history. It's very strange that he's not on there.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's one that I had. So I guess now it's right back to you.
All right. Well, let's stick with pitchers who are among the greatest of all time. And I'm going to go back to my favorite team, or at least baseball team, who are the Boston Red Sox. Do you know who the leading win getters in the history of the Red Sox are?
Sam Mayday Malone.
No, it is a tie between two players. Roger Clemens and Cy Young. Neither of whom have their number retired. Now, Cy Young doesn't have his number retired because he didn't have a number. So numbers were not a thing. But if you have the greatest pitcher of all time, who is your all-time wins leader, they named the award after him, the guy who has the most wins, you'd think they would have found a way just to put like Cy up there or something
and
in honor of Cy Young, who holds the record for most wins in team history. Now, Clemens is a whole nother discussion as to whether he gets in. Clemens is clearly one of the, I will say, three best pitchers in the history of the Red Sox with Cy Young and Pedro. But he left under interesting situation and has a weird relationship with the team. So I can understand why that would be. It's kind of a Bill Parcells type relationship with the team, to be honest, at this point. He forced his way out, got traded to, when he was looking washed up, got traded to the Blue Jays, and then all of a sudden was amazing again. And that's when, at least the conspiracy theory in Boston is that he started using performance-enhancing drugs. I have no idea whether he did or not. That's just what they say. But Cy Young is someone who, even though he doesn't have a number, should be immortalized by the Red Sox somewhere. Another one who isn't immortalized, who I think they need to consider, is Jimmy Fox, who's immortalized by the Philadelphia Athletics, who are now the Oakland Athletics, but was not done in Boston either. And he was, after Ruth, the greatest player until Williams came along.
Yeah,
so,
the one thing, though, the Phillies did a pretty good job, too, because they still, what is it, their Wall of Fame? I'm trying to remember what it's called. So where they still acknowledge a lot of the great players in athletic history when the team was located in Philadelphia. Yeah, because I think a lot of people don't even know that that Philadelphia, like the Phillies, were pretty much the B team. They were the Chicago White Sox for what, decades in that city.
Long time. Yeah, long time. I mean, they didn't win their first championship until Schmidt came along.
Yeah, until 1980, and they had that whiz kid run of, was it 51? Where they won the pennant. I think.
That might be.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. But that's literally it for the first 100 years of Phillies history. They were, as much as people talked about the curse of the Bambino and the Billy Goat curse and the curse of the Black Sox with the White Sox, so I don't know how many people really talked about that. The Phillies were by far a worse, more cursed team for much longer than any of those three were. So,
well, it's Philadelphia. They know how to take care of their athletes when they like them.
Yeah, of course.
Except for Dick Allen.
Ooh, now Dick Allen is a guy who we're going to be discussing, I think, coming up here pretty soon when we talk about the golden era folks that are coming up. You know, the golden era committee is going to have guys that they're going to be looking at, and Dick Allen is going to be one of those guys who I think needs more looking into than he's had in the past.
So that's one that I had him on my secondary list, but I just thought it would sort of tie in well with in Philadelphia. Because Dick Allen, his best year was, I believe, as White Sox when he won the MVP. But, he came up in the Phillies ranks. Philadelphia, if I remember correctly, I'm just doing this off the top of my head, was one of the last teams to integrate. And so when Allen came up in the early 60s, there wasn't a whole lot of people in the organization who looked like him. And, sort of tying in with the first theme of the show, it's not a bad choice right now. It's not a bad choice, period.
Agreed.
It's even better now. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Dick Allen is someone who is, he's on the cusp of the Hall of Fame. He's been on the cusp of the Hall of Fame for 30 years at this point. He's one of those guys who's just been on the wrong side of that door, but he's somebody who certainly is worthy of consideration, if not outright enshrinement. And that's a good number for the Phillies to look at.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to go next?
Sure. Why are we sticking Philly?
Okay.
So I'm going to go with Philly. Also used to have another basketball team before the 76ers, the Philadelphia Warriors. And the best player on those Philadelphia Warriors teams who's long been forgotten is actually Paul Arizen. So Paul Arizen is a Hall of Famer. He only played for, let's see, how many years? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years, because he lost 2 years to military service in the Korean War. That's how long ago we're talking. But Arizen was one of the first great stars of the NBA, led them to, I believe, 2 titles back when they were the Philadelphia Warriors, and is someone who, it's a little surprising given how many of the early people whose numbers got retired all over the place. Seems like someone who just got completely left behind somehow when the team moved essentially cross country and became first San Francisco and then the Golden State Warriors. So I don't know if Golden State would go about retiring it now because A, he's passed away and there's probably no great cry for it, and B, he never actually played in the Bay. But that is somebody who, if you look back at the history of early NBA, is somebody who seems to have been forgotten a little bit by his team. So
that's a good one. Yeah, I didn't even come up with that. That's a very good one. I got a couple more football ones here.
Go for it.
Yeah, Broncos, Terrell Davis. Yeah. So the Broncos have only retired 3 numbers, and I know your feeling on sort of like the retire on, and they do have the Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
There. Yeah. The ones they've got are Elway, Floyd Little, and Frank Tripucka. Tripucka was, I think we talked about him last week because he probably wasn't. Well, he probably was. He was not even. He wasn't that good, frankly.
Right.
Floyd Little got petitioned into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But the guy who won them the Super Bowl, all due respect to John Elway, but the MVP was Terrell Davis. If the Pro Football Hall of Fame can sort of look over the brevity of his career and get him in, knowing that he's the one that got them those Super Bowls. No disrespect to Elway, and I was really happy that for John Elway getting that, but that does not happen without Terrell Davis. Period. It just doesn't.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, that's a really good choice. If I believed in football retired numbers, he would be somebody I'd consider. You got another football one, though, while you're at it?
Yeah, I do. I can go back over to Pittsburgh because they have numbers out of circulation, but they've only got 2 numbers retired: Mean Joe and Eddie Staunton. Not Eddie Staunton. Damn it, I just blanked on his first name. But it was 9-time Pro Bowler Staunton. So numbers out of circulation: Franco Harris, Jack Lambert, Terry Bradshaw. Although I kind of think Bradshaw and Aikman are kind of the same quarterback, different decade. But Franco Harris,
Ernie Stautner.
Ernie
Stautner.
Stautner. Well, why did I keep wanting to say Staunton? I must have been reading about Mike Stanton today.
Yeah, so go ahead.
Yeah, so Franco Harris, I sort of feel passionate about. Now, again, if you're going to put something out of circulation and no one's going to wear it, you might as well retire it.
Yeah, agreed.
Especially with Harris and Lambert, who were both named to the 100th anniversary team.
Yeah. That's there's some good people there. The Steelers, by and large, do a good job remembering their guys. But yeah, if you're going to retire numbers, that's a good person to have. So, all right. I am going to stick with basketball and go with, do you know, there are a couple of teams in the NBA that have never retired a number. Do you know which one has been around the longest without retiring a number?
Let's see. All right, because I have that up, but I'm going to try not to look at that. Who's been around the longest without retiring a number? Orlando?
No, much longer than Orlando.
Oh, much longer than Orlando. Okay.
Mm-hmm. It's move cities.
It's move cities. Okay. Clippers?
The Clippers. Yep. So the Clippers have never retired a number. They've even retired the fans thing, which is the one thing the Clippers have done correctly, apparently, in their careers, or in their existence. So the question I had was, who would be the Clipper whose number you would retire?
V. Stiviano.
Danny Manning. No. I was, and I think about it, the problem with this guy is he was a Buffalo Brave first, and only really played with the team for the first 5 years of his career. But I would argue that he may be the greatest retired player who's ever played for them, and that's Bob McAdoo.
Mm-hmm.
So McAdoo was the first great Buffalo Brave player. He, like I said, was only with them a few years, but is one of the most respected and widely known players in the league history of the league. And with the franchise as moribund as the Clippers, you'd think they would have. You'd think they do what the Padres did, and they guys who were there a couple years that retire them. But McAdoo just seems like the best player for a team that's been around for a long time without ever retiring any numbers. I mean, hell, the Grizzlies have retired 2 numbers. So Bob McAdoo is. I was just looking for if you're going to retire a Clipper, that's who I would go with.
Mm-hmm. Okay. No, that's a really good one. And I'm trying to think off the top of my head who were the 2 Grizzlies retired numbers. I know it's not Big Country, Bryant Reeves.
It is not Big Country, and it is not Steve Francis.
Not Stevie Basketball. Grizzlies, who would that be, actually? Because their best players are just
they're number 9 and number 50.
They died?
No. No one died. So the number 9 and number 50 are the 2 retired numbers for the Grizzlies.
Who's that?
Number 9 is Tony Allen.
Okay.
And number 50, Zach Randolph.
Oh, Zebo's officially retired or just out of circulation?
No, it's retired.
Okay.
So I'm trying to figure out when he retired. Yeah, no, but 9 and 50 are retired for the Grizzlies. Okay. So there you go.
All right, so I got an interesting one, sort of kind of like, again, based on the current climate, and I wanted to stay away from politics, but it's a legend who's never had his number retired. Possibly he did from teams that no longer exist. The first pitcher in the American League, first black pitcher in the American League, Satchel Paige. And I think it would be really, really classy of the Indians organization to retire his number.
That would be a very good choice.
Yeah. It was a draw. I mean, yeah, he came in when he was 41, and he actually had 2 All-Star years later as the St. Louis Browns, but the Orioles don't even acknowledge any existence of the St. Louis franchise in their Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Did I ever tell you my grandfather was a minor leaguer for the St. Louis Browns? My grandfather was a third base minor league prospect for them.
No. I didn't know that. Now, I have no idea how real the story is, but every story I've heard about that side of the family I think is ridiculous ends up being true. Mm-hmm. But my grandfather my grandmother, my mom's mom, held the American record for 100-yard low hurdles at one point in her career. That was when the women could only run over low hurdles because they had to run in a skirt. So she held the American record for that, and my grandfather was a minor league baseball player who was called up to spring training but had just graduated med school and was going to make more money as a doctor, so he never ended up going. But yeah, they ended up getting married, and he was a country doctor in Freeport, Illinois for years and years and years. So. Yeah, so he was a minor league prospect and then became a country doctor. Are you the grandson of Archie Moonlight Graham?
Not that I know of, no. But yes, yeah, Moonlight Graham is had one more half inning than my grandfather did in the majors.
Okay.
So.
And kudos to the 2 people who got that reference. Might just only be you and I.
Hey, if you tell the joke, they will understand. That didn't repeat either. I tried.
Nice.
So, yeah. So my grandfather and my grandmother. My grandmother, I remember when she was in her, gotta be late 70s, her cat got out. And I remember seeing her hurdle over a small bush and caught the cat at a full dive.
And she was wearing a full skirt, too.
She may have been she was probably wearing a skirt at the time, too. Yeah, knowing my grandmother. So I just remember her diving and catching the cat. So she was an interesting lady.
The stories I have about my grandfather, I can't really tell. Let's see.
Oh, you haven't heard my grandfather's brother who had a car chase through Chicago where he was shooting back and forth on a mobster and kidnapped his daughter. That story seemed like complete bullcrap until I lived with my grandfather's youngest sibling for a year in Virginia, and she had all the newspaper clippings on it. So, yeah, he was a dentist, but his daughter, my mom's cousin, was dating a member of the mafia and broke up with him, and so he ran out to her house, kidnapped her, tried to bring her into Chicago, and my great uncle chased her. And they were shooting at each other, one with a handgun and one with a shotgun, until the other guy crashed and got arrested. And my great uncle just got away scot-free, from what I understand, with his daughter in tow. So there you go. I told you, like, all these stories are ridiculous, and they're somehow true. They're newspaper clippings. So I actually have a number that the Canadians haven't retired, which is crazy because, A, I just hate the Canadians, and B, they've retired a whole hell of a lot of numbers.
Can I guess who it is?
Go ahead.
Toe Blake.
Toe Blake, you nailed it. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Toe Blake is the guy. There's legitimately, the only reason I could think that Toe Blake's number isn't retired is that he's thought of as a coach more at this point than as a player. But Toe Blake played... how many years did he play? I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. He played with the Canadians he played 1 year with the Montreal Maroons. And I played with the Canadians from 1935 through 1948, where they won like a ton of championships. And he was on the absolute best line with Maurice Richard and I can't think of the guy who was on the other side from Toe Blake.
Oh, was that Belleville? Or Joffrion?
No, who was... I can't remember, but they were on the first line, and he's legitimately worthy in every way, shape, or form of being remembered for his number. But I think it's just the fact he was a coach, and a coach who won 8 Stanley Cups. That his playing days are forgotten as much, and he should. If the Canadians retire another number, Toe Blake should be the guy.
I hate to say it. If he had a French name, it already would have happened.
Oh, it's not Blaquet?
If it was Le Pied Blake... What is toe? I know foot. Pied Blake. Petit Pied Blackie? Then he'd be in. It's not
the center was Elmer Locke, by the way.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So Elmer Locke was the center between Toe Blake and Maurice Richard.
Yeah, I was looking at Toe Blake also. I got a pretty good one for hockey that I think should happen. Then the city loves him, and we sort of know why his play sort of fell off. Terran Fleury.
Yeah, Teo Fleury was someone I looked at, but decided not to put on my list. But go ahead, go with Teo.
Yeah, because I remember, I think I was a rookie of the Stanley Cup championship team. Big, super, super popular. Guy was only he's still alive. 5'6", 5'7". Played like he was 6'4". Just left everything out on the ice, and his play fell off dramatically as he sort of partook in the substance, let's say. One of those guys who drank or snorted his way out of the Hall of Fame because he should have had a much better career than he did. But when we talked about, I just blanked on the player, Sheldon Kennedy.
Kennedy, yeah.
Yeah. So when he came out with that, Fleury did also. So he was also a victim of Graham James. and he came out without years after, which sort of explains the reckless behavior.
It does, yeah.
So, but statistically, Fleury was excellent. So there's a case to be made without sort of forgiving his without sort of forgiving like how he didn't live up to his full potential. But he did win a cup there, and is still massively popular and well loved in Calgary.
That's a very good choice.
Because I think that's also what I think is the other thing that sometimes, because you and I were both very analytical when we look at this for stats, and sometimes I forget sort of the emotion. Just having gone to a couple Flames games, and you still see people wearing Fleury jerseys.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that doesn't happen to just every retired player.
No, that's true. And there are actually a couple of guys I had in my list of players who were better loved by their teams and were there at the height of their team's success that are still loved and never getting in the Hall of Fame that I thought might be worthy. And Fleury, well, do you think Fleury will ever get in the Hall of Fame?
I think that he very well could. I
think it's possible.
It's possible, actually, and that sort of reminds me, that's what we got up on tap next week, because on June 24th is when they're going to announce the Hockey Hall.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so we could do that as a preview unless it becomes another loaded week.
Well, can I bring up another guy who would probably be in consideration for that, whose number hasn't been retired then?
Absolutely.
My guy who grew up not that far from me is on TV all the time, a little bit of a loudmouth, but a hell of a hockey player, and hasn't had his number retired by the Blackhawks, Jeremy Roenick.
Okay. I didn't know that you knew him as a kid.
I did not know him as a kid. Tony Amonte grew up if you go out, and I lived right in the border of the Winchester and Medford, and he grew up like just a few streets over, from what I understand, from where I was. But yeah, Jeremy Roenick, Boston boy, with the Blackhawks for years and years and years as their best player. Both he and Amonte were, and I mentioned his name earlier, defenseman, just completely out of my head. Oh my God. I need to either drink more or less. I'm not sure. I don't really drink very much, so apparently it's more. But he was the heart and soul of those Blackhawk teams that were very good and never quite made it. But Roenick is a guy who was a heart and soul of those Blackhawk teams and was clearly their best player for quite a long time. And someone else, I think, was at least worthy of consideration to have his number retired. So
yeah, I think so too. I think Roenick also is a very strong candidate for the Hockey Hall of Fame, has been for a long time. And it's funny though, like we talk about how he's very much outspoken, but his level of outspokenness would place him in the bottom 20 percentile in NBA or NFL.
Oh no, yeah, certainly, yeah. By the way, Ed Belfour's number hasn't been retired either. By either the Stars or the Blackhawks.
Interesting.
Which is weird. Yeah, that was someone else who came up. I just don't know if he retired. Goalies' numbers are so weird. But
well, here's that useless thing about Belfour. Remember, not that long ago, I was talking about how in 2004 Canada did, or CBC, the main channel in Canada. We now have more than one channel, by the way.
Wow!
Yeah.
Congratulations. Yeah. St. John's is really booming and got kid to support a station, huh?
It really is. It's come a long way, eh? Every now and then I can put it back on.
Just don't use the Newfie accent on me. I'll never be able to understand you.
You think I can?
The Newfie, for those who don't know, the Newfoundland accent, if you've never met anyone from Newfoundland, like that accent is the hardest accent in English to understand. I don't think it's close. I don't think there's a close second. Close second's got to be like Boomhauer from King of the Hill.
Well,
but like that Newfie accent's nearly impossible.
If you ever get the ability if any of us can travel again, if you can ever visit me down here in Barbados, I'll take you to a couple local bars where they're talking to each other. You might have a different opinion.
That's entirely possible. I don't know that many Bayesian people. But my sister went to school at Acadia in Nova Scotia, and she had a whole bunch of Newfie friends. And, oh, my God, when I went to visit, I had no idea what any of them were saying.
Well, so when Canada, when they put out, or CBC put out that top 100 list, 13 of them were hockey players, or was it 13 or 11? I can make a case for a few of them, but one of those people that just blew me away, like seriously, is Ed Belfour, considered at one point in time one of the 100 greatest Canadians. And I don't know what it was. Was it that curly mullet that sort of made him that great? Was that he peaked at age 21?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like it's like I don't never quite understood that. That's
all right. Well,
yeah.
How many more of these do you want to do?
I'd say 2.
2 more?
Yep.
All right. So, because we've been going a while, and I could just keep going. So I'm going to go with probably. Well, I mean, I think we've brought up Kevin Garnett before, and there's a reason Garnett's number hasn't been retired by the Timberwolves. So I don't want to use it on him, but we should at least mention it.
Yeah.
I want to go with. I think you could arguably say the greatest player in the first 50 years of the NBA who does not have his number retired. And that is member of the NBA 50 team and the NBA 75 team, Jerry Lucas.
Oh, that's a good, very good one. I didn't have that.
Yeah, Jerry Lucas, I mean, part of his problem is he played most of his career in Cincinnati. The Cincinnati Royals, who are now the Sacramento Kings. And it's honestly, Sacramento overall, for as weird a history as we now modern think that they had, they've actually done a pretty good job with the retired numbers. But Lucas is, I mean, until recently, I think you could honestly say, with the way the NBA used to be played up through the 80s, he was probably one of the 20 greatest players in the league now, in league history. But now everything has changed with the explosion of teams and abilities. Jerry Lucas would get destroyed in today's game. Of course, all those guys have trained differently with today's game, but that's a whole separate issue. But Lucas is a guy who played with Cincinnati, played with the Knicks at the end of his careers with the San Francisco Warriors for a couple of years. But 7-time All-Star, first team, or first ballot Hall of Famer for the Pro Basketball Hall of Fame. Basketball Hall of Fame, not Pro Basketball, but Basketball Hall of Fame. And certainly somebody who the Kings could consider. He's still alive. He's 80 years old. He's still going. But he's one of the greatest players in NBA history by almost any measure. And he doesn't have his number retired anywhere. Mm-hmm. So it would be the Kings who did it, but they'd be retiring a guy who played, 2,000 miles away at this point and a long time ago. So, but I just wanted to bring up Jerry Lucas.
Yeah, no, that's a really good one. I've got, so my last 2 are baseball, and one that not necessarily for what he did as a player, but if you combine everything as a player and a manager, I think a good one for Chicago, the White Sox, would be Ozzie Guillen.
Yeah, Ozzie Guillen would be very interesting because he is probably, even with Frank Thomas and all those other guys, Ozzie Guillen at this point is probably the most loved White Sox around here. Like, everybody loves Ozzie Guillen. Even with all of his controversial statements or actions or whatever, that Ozzie Guillen is basically a cult hero in Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to like about him. He was on some good teams. 3-time All-Star, was the manager of the White Sox last championship. Was that 2005? He had an on-base percentage of under 300, but who remembers that other than me? Only the one Gold Glove. But I mean, there were so many great infielders. Only winning one Gold Glove, you don't hold that against him.
Well, it's the same thing with Brad Park as the defenseman never winning a Norris. Mm-hmm. That was not necessarily his fault. It all depends on who you're up against at the time.
No, absolutely. Actually, I think one of the most underrated defensive players is, in some ways, one of the most overrated offensive players in Cal Ripken Jr.
Yeah. True.
Never got his credit defensively. Offensively, I thought he was a little bit overrated, but either way, certainly deserving of the first ballot Hall of Fame status. Do you want to go next with the last one?
Sure. Where's your last one? So, what sport's your last one in?
Baseball.
Baseball. Okay. So I only had 2 more baseball players. Mm-hmm. One of whom we talked about retired by the Padres. Is that one of the ones you talked about?
That I've talked about? I don't have a Padre.
No, so the last two I have, who if I'll just say them quickly, and if one of them's yours, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
One would be retired by the Cardinals, the other by the Dodgers. Is that your guy?
I have one who is a Dodger.
Okay, so the one who was retired by the Cardinals, to get that one out of the way, who I think we should at least consider, is Ted Simmons, who just got in the Hall of Fame. Somebody just in passing we should mention. I would say, God, I have, look left here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 basketball players and 3 hockey players still left. So let me just go to, I'm just going to go to the Washington Capitals with my last one, just because of our favorite retired number from 2 weeks ago. The guy whose number is not retired for that team is Peter Bondra.
Yeah, great player from
Bondra,
Slovakia, I believe.
Yeah, Bondra is. I was in D.C. at college at the height of Bondra's time in with the Capitals, and he was by far the greatest thing on that team, not named Oli Kolzig. But he was a hell of a hockey player, one of the all-time league scorer, I believe, in Capitals history before Ovechkin came around. And with the bar they had set by Yves, whose last name I don't even remember anymore.
Labre.
Yeah, that's right. Yves Labre. You'd think that Bondra would have had his number retired at this point, but he has not. So the Capitals need to get on that with Bondra and get his number up there.
So before I do mine, who's your Dodger? To see if it's the same person.
It is the guy who had his number retired by the Padres.
Oh, Garvey.
Steve Garvey.
Oh, okay. No, I have a different Dodger.
Okay, who you got?
Fernando Valenzuela.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, because this was one of my first things that I really remember growing up was Fernando Mania. And a big part of that was in 81. This is because that's when the Expos were in the playoffs. So I remember there was a day game, and the teacher rolled in the TV so that we could remember rolling in the TV with the big back and all that. I'm not even going to try to explain what low definition is to people who are under 30.
Mm-hmm.
And so watch the last 2 innings of I guess what's sort of called the Blue Monday game when Rick Monday hit a home run that put the Dodgers into the World Series. Because that was a big deal for Canadian sports fans at the time. We had nothing. So then, from there, you sort of learn all about Lasorda, and then Valenzuela. It was just he was it. He was the guy. You could say he was one of those guys who helped save baseball because 1981 had that weird strike right in the middle of the season, and yeah, so you had this pudgy kid who could barely speak any English. I mean, we don't remember that now when you hear him talk, but at the time when he was 20 years old, he couldn't speak English at all. He didn't look like an athlete. Had one of those smiles that you don't even care where he's from, what he is, and what he does for a living. He's hey, what a great guy. And he wasn't just a one season pitcher though too, because he won that Rookie of the Year. Won the Cy Young, but then he was also in the top 5 of the Cy Young for 3 other times, and a lot of people don't remember just how good he was throughout the 80s, because the phenom just sort of died. But he was that important, and also as an Hispanic, a Mexican player in Los Angeles. Yeah,
and Chavez Ravine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's an icon there.
That's a pretty darn good one. That would be very welcome today.
I think so.
For Dodgers fans. No, yeah, I absolutely agreed.
Yeah, and just Garvey was, I don't know, maybe with his little, after all his little scandals came out and he tried to present this perfect life.
Yeah, that's true.
Nobody really cares if you're not necessarily that great family man. Just don't say you are. That's why Tiger Woods got shit on.
Yeah.
And Charles Barkley doesn't.
And Derek Jeter gives out gift baskets and gets praised for it. Just by the way, the last numbers I had, I just going to throw them out there. We don't have to talk about them. Mm-hmm. For hockey, I had 2 more. I had Kevin Lowe,
Yep.
For the Edmonton Oilers. And I had Sergei Fedorov for the Red Wings.
Yeah, I had him as my second tier also.
Yeah, someone. And then the last ones I had were all basketball. I had for the Atlanta Hawks, but he was a St. Louis Hawk, Cliff Hagan, who with Bob Pettit was one of the greatest 1-2 duos of the early 50s. Going back again, too, I had Harry Gallatin, who would have been with the New York Knicks, whose number is not retired. Walt Bellamy, whose number is not retired by... Well, part of the problem is I'm not sure where he would be because he played with so many teams. But he, again, won the top on the NBA All 50 best team. Mark Aguirre, whose number should be retired by the Mavericks, seeing as they retired everybody else on the team who wasn't as good as him, but they haven't retired Aguirre's number. And the last guy that's never going to make the Hall of Fame, but is really loved and is part of the best time probably in team history, Rick Smits with the Indiana Pacers.
Yeah, I like that.
So.
I'll just give you, I guess, my last few here. Just the same sort of thing. Dan Quisenberry, Royals, like major superstar closer.
I was going to say, well, A, an all-around nice guy. B, died much too young. And C, probably of my youth, the most unique delivery of all time. He there's submarine pitchers, and he threw the ball from below his knee in the middle of his shin when that ball came towards home plate.
Oh, just crazy. That was just one of those first relievers who was like a star reliever to me, just growing up.
Yeah, and he had the cool windup or the cool delivery, and he had the cool mustache and the cool last name. Quisenberry would be a weird name, but nobody else had it. And so everything about him was neat. And Dan Quisenberry was one of those guys who, even as a Red Sox fan, you recognized right away and wanted to pitch like you messed around with your buddies playing wiffle ball, trying to throw like him, and saw how freaking hard it was with a wiffle ball. I can't even imagine with a baseball. But yeah, good choice. I like Dan Quisenberry a lot.
Yeah, another one in baseball, David Wright.
Oh, with the Mets?
Yeah. Just they take forever to do that. They're finally doing Jerry Koosman this year.
Yeah, David Wright falls on the Nomar Garciaparra and Dustin Pedroia list for me. Mm-hmm. People who had incredible starts, got injured, and just never were the same.
And I guess just finish at home with the Saints. Just get a good retired number. Just maybe go to the Dome Patrol, Ricky Jackson. Or one a Hall of Famer, Willie Rowe.
He's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. Just don't let Drew Brees do the induction speech right now.
They should get who's the guy who blocked the punt who has ALS now?
Oh, Steve Gleason.
Yeah, get Steve Gleason to do it.
I'm not even sure he can talk right now.
Mm.
I think it's progressed to that stage. But yeah, no, that's.
I was gonna make a bad joke about Breeze and the fact that Gleason couldn't talk, but decided I'll just let that pass out of.
I think well.
Anyway, all right. Before we get ourselves in trouble, we should probably get out of here. But so you want to look at NHL potential for next week?
Yeah, I think so. Unless something just shoots out of the gate for next week, but yeah, I think that's sort of a good one to sort of preview. I think we both know it's going to be Ginla who's going to join him.
Yeah. Well, crazier things have happened. If they don't induct in Ginla, that would be bizarre. So, and as to who will join him, after last year, we legitimately have no idea.
No, because I would not have been guessing Zuboff and Carbonneau. That would not have been what I would have guessed. I'll still maintain my conspiracy theory. They did that so that they can sort of appear woke and have a female as your headliner in Haley Wickenheiser.
Entirely possible. Well, but that was Ginla and I don't know. We're gonna have to go down your list. I'm gonna have to pick somewhere around number. Do you have your list in front of you right now?
Not in front of me. Let's bring that up. So
I was gonna say I'm gonna predict blind without having it in front of me. I'm going to predict it will be whoever number 31 on your list is.
All right.
Let's see who number 31 is. Let's go.
Dun, dun, dun. I'm on page 1. I know it won't be Don Cherry.
It will not be Don Cherry.
It'll not be Don Cherry. No, especially after because he got fired.
Yes.
Okay, would you say number 31?
31. Yeah, who's number 31?
Bobby Smith.
I'm not feeling as good about that one.
No, I'm not either.
I'll go with it. I'll go with it. I'm taking it anyway. I just did that completely blind. I actually feel better about the guys on either side of him, Gary Suter and Nikolai Habibulin. But yeah, I'll go with Bobby Smith as my literally throwing a dart at a list. So there we go.
That might be how they decided it last year.
Highly possible. They took your list and just threw, and they weren't as good at darts as they thought they were.
Well, I mean, because you're always thinking to yourself when you're part of that Hockey Hall of Fame committee, now, how do we honor the Dallas Stars championship season? How do we go back and do that? All right. Now,
I think you do it the same way that the Portland Trailblazers did that 77 team. You just take everybody.
Might as well.
Yeah. So, anyway, all right, dude. I will talk to you next week. Hopefully, it'll be a quieter week, but I doubt it, like worldwide. So
yeah. Well, we will see. We will see.
Yeah.
All right.
Talk to you later, man.
All right, take care. Bye. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope everyone out there is staying safe. Look for more content from us at nothalloffame.com very soon.